I think so many of us can relate. There were so many parts in the book that I could personally relate to through Adam's story. Then she goes through trial. Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to do a book review with you today. I don't think I've done a book review on my channel since I reviewed my friend Sean Hopwood's book Lawman years ago. I think that was back in 2011 or 2012, and I didn't even know Sean at the time. We hadn't met yet. So it is definitely overdue. And then the other day I had one of you guys, one of my amazing subscribers, I love you all so much. You asked me for a book recommendation and I said, just give me about a week. I'm finishing this book and it is amazing. So I finally finished. The book is called Afterlife: My Journey from Incarceration to Freedom, and it is by Miss Alice Marie Johnson. I will put a picture of the book cover right up there for you guys. This book is wonderful and amazing. If you don't know who Alice Marie Johnson is, what rock have you been living under, my friend? Alice was one of the very few people who was pardoned, who got clemency by President Donald Trump. And in her camp that she had fighting for her was none other than celebrity Kim Kardashian.
Today, in the sixth act of executive clemency of his administration, President Trump commuted her sentence. It came after Kim Kardashian West lobbied the president on her behalf.
And she tells the whole entire story in this book of what she did when she was convicted of her crime, what she had done before. She actually talks about her whole entire childhood, her youth, and I think so many of us can relate. There were so many parts in the book that I could personally relate to through Adam's story. Then she goes through trial. Then she goes to sentencing, and then she goes into her incarceration. She goes through all of the ups and the downs that I've talked to you guys about. I've related to her so much in this book because of all that. And then her filing for clemency under President Obama and getting so close. And then how she eventually got connected with Kim Kardashian. And then how President Trump finally let her out of prison, and they go a little bit into what it was like after release in the very last chapter. But I want to talk about the parts that stood out to me. I don't want to give too much of her story away, so what I'm going to do is explain stories in my life that I could so 100% relate to. I listened to this book on audio driving out to visit Adam last time I went to go see him, and he'll always ask me, what'd you listen to on the way? Because he knows that I listen to books. Because if I'm just flipping the station or listening to anything, just music for 6 hours, I am absolutely going to get bored. My drive will feel like it's 24 hours. And I've always wanted to use this experience to better myself. So I listen to books, I learn things, because this way I feel it's a way that the system is not winning, that I am making the best of it, and that I am taking matters into my own hands to thrive during this awful situation. So for you guys that aren't familiar with Adam's case, I will link a video above all about him, and I have a whole playlist dedicated to him and everything that's going on with him legally. But in a nutshell, Adam was sentenced to 213 years for robberies where nobody was physically hurt because he had a gun in his possession that was not brandished or discharged. And I do not want to hear do the crime, do the time. We've been down that road before, and I don't entertain those comments. Adam was guilty. He did deserve to do time. He deserved to do a large chunk of time, but he did not deserve to pay for his crime with his life, where nobody lost theirs or was even injured physically during the commission of his crimes. That is all I will say about that. But I did relate very, very closely, similarly to what Miss Alice went through, because she also fell victim to mandatory minimum sentencing laws. Miss Alice never saw the product. She never touched the product. She merely exchanged information in a couple of phone calls, and she was painted out to be this crazy kingpin lord throughout her trial. And very similarly, Adam was sentenced. Miss Alice chose to take her case to trial, as did Adam. Miss Alice chose to not take a plea because she was not guilty of what the government said she was guilty of. Adam also did not choose to take a plea because he did not want to cooperate and incriminate people that he never even met. The FBI wanted him to make up a story and help them convict somebody that he did not even know. So during trial, one of the biggest similarities in the book, during trial, there were a bunch of drug dealers who wanted to get time off of their sentences, or they didn't want to go to jail whatsoever. So they created these crazy elaborate stories where they had never even met her. One person said that he was at her house over 20 times, yet on a map, he could not identify where she lived. Another person who had never met her said that they had hung out many, many, many times. And when asked to be identified, because Miss Alice turned to her attorney and she said, he wouldn't even be able to pick me out. Ask him to point me out. And he pointed out somebody else in the crowd. Same thing happened, exactly the same thing happened to Adam. One of the witnesses was this strung out addict who was trying to not go to jail. So they cleaned him up and they put him on the stand and they said, please point out Mr. Clausen. And he looked around for a second and he pointed directly to one of Adam's co-defendants. And that co-defendant's attorney jumped up, and according to Adam, he said he threw him some bail, meaning he was like, absolutely not, that is not my client. My client was not involved in anything that you're talking about, because this particular co-defendant was acquitted on a few of the robberies that Adam was accused of. And so the judge said, well, Mr. Clausen changed his appearance so drastically since the times of these robberies and now at trial that he was unidentifiable. The only difference in Adam's appearance was that during the time of the robberies, he was wearing contacts, and since he had been arrested and wasn't able to get contacts inside of jail, he was wearing round wire-framed glasses. That is it. That is it. He is 6'4", 200 pounds. His co-defendant was probably 5'6", 5'7", very different color hair, very different face shape, very different build. There is no way that a pair of glasses could ever make anybody to confuse these two gentlemen. However, it stuck. And the same thing happened with Alice. They said that they just got confused or something silly like that. Adam always asks me what I'm listening to on the way to visit. So when he asked me and I told him the book, he smiled. And then when I told him that story of the similarities in their trial, he just kind of shook his head. And I said, those cannot be the only two stories of injustice at trial. I said, it sounds to me like that situation and those stories are more common than they're not. And he said, absolutely. How is this okay? How is this allowed to still happen? And I thank people like Miss Alice for using her voice and for getting this book out there, and for now that she's home advocating for all of her fellow prisoners of war that have been left behind. So another similarity that I could so relate to during this book, and if you guys that have been with me for a while through YouTube, and then when I left YouTube and went to Facebook and I went to Periscope and then I came back to YouTube, you guys know who are with me on Periscope that Adam and I applied for, well, Adam, not me, I just kind of was, went through it. I almost said guilty by association, but no, I went through it with him. I'm not guilty by any means. But we went through applying for clemency back with the big clemency push in 2016, right before President Obama was left out of office. And Miss Alice completely, thoroughly, vividly described what she went through during her process of clemency and her emotions and almost the relief every time a denialist came out. And then then her emotions and the feeling of despair and the sinking feeling every time an approved list came out, but she never lost hope. Weaved throughout this whole entire book is the fact that she never lost hope, and she always kept her faith, and she remained positive, and she always knew in her gut that she would come home. But she told this one story about how the phone rang and she was called down to the office after her family fought, and they were told by the White House that they were holding up the last day, the final list, prior to President Trump being sworn in and President Obama no longer being the president and have any part in power. She was told by the White House that she would be on the next list. And the phone rang. And she was called down, and it was about something completely different, and she felt crushed. And then the list came out. She wasn't on it. The following day, she watched the inauguration, and she never made it, and she did not know why. And I had a very similar feeling. We got word that Adam's petition had made it up to Joe Biden, the vice president at the time's desk. It went through all the channels. I believe, but don't quote me as this being fact, but there are a bunch. I believe it's 7 different approvals and offices that it needs to go through, all the way back to the district court and the circuit that you were sentenced in. It got approved. And the last person it hit was the vice president's desk. And unfortunately, what happened for us was we just ran out of time. It just got there too late. And so that crushing feeling that she explained, I lived that with her. You guys that lived it with me, you know I made a video every day, every time a list came out, whether it was a denial or an approved list. The night before the inauguration, when I thought it was over and I got word that there would be one more list, and that wound up just being inmate.com. That wound up being a rumor. And I waited that morning, and I was at the doctor's office, and I was sitting there just trying to fake it. And as they were swearing in President Trump, and the girls behind the desk, so sweet, the receptionists at this doctor office, we were talking about what Melania was wearing and what Ivanka was wearing, what Hillary was wearing, and her face and all of that stuff. I was faking it. I was trying so hard, but I couldn't help that crushed, sinking feeling in my stomach, and the whole way home I cried. That whole day I cried, and for the next 6 weeks I would spontaneously just break out into tears. Didn't matter where I was, at the gym, at the doctor's office, at my desk at work, it would just come, and I couldn't stop it because of the emotions, that roller coaster, the ups and the downs. And she even explained being some way relieved when it was done, and I get it. And even though it wasn't a positive thing, I get it. I understand this much. I wasn't the one living it, Adam was. And so I can so relate to what she went through. And what I'm gonna say right now, I don't care if I have haters, or I would love if you would comment and support me in this and give me a thumbs up. But I will also be able to relate to Miss Alice the day that my husband gets released, and the day that he's running up the field towards me like she did to her family after she served 20 plus years in prison.
Alice Marie Johnson, you see her here rushing into the arms of relatives, was released after 21 years in prison. She was sentenced to life for a first-time nonviolent federal drug conviction.
And my husband is right there. He served 19 and a half at this point. We will be there too, because like I said, the theme through this book, and if I had to say anything that I've gotten out of it, the one thing was, one, somebody who can relate, the support, but more than that is to always keep the faith and to never get attached to one outcome. I've been there. When you get so laser focused on one outcome, you start missing the other avenues that could be open to you. You get laser focused and you don't see anything anymore. You get that tunnel vision. But unfortunately, life is going to work the way that it's meant to work out. We fight and we push for the things that we want, and we explore every avenue. So right now we have a few avenues open to us, and we have certain people pushing what they want to push. And here's the thing, Adam's mother and I just talked about this yesterday. Who cares how he gets out? Who cares who gets him out? All we care about is the fact that he gets out. I can see it. I've lived it thousands of times. I've watched him in my mind's eye come towards me. I've felt that embrace and that first kiss. And I swear one day, I promise you guys, we will be living it just like Miss Alice.
Alice, does it feel strange to be out?
Yes, I have not been in a car without handcuffs in almost 22 years. I tell you, that was the best sight I believe I've ever seen in my life, was to see my family out here today. I felt like I was flying, not running.
I love you guys. Please go read that book. Please comment below and let me know what you think about it, because I truly and genuinely enjoyed it. I don't have extra time to be reading, so I do not recommend books, first of all, that I don't read. Second of all, that I do not get something out of and wholeheartedly agree with, or feel entertained by, or have learned from. This book checks all of those boxes. So I will post a link to the book where you can get it below. If you want to send it to your loved one, you can send it right through Amazon. And if you have any questions, let me know. But go follow Miss Alice's story. Go tell her you love her, how proud of her you are, and that you are supporting all of, again, the prisoners of this drug war and this war against mandatory minimums and the war against mass incarceration, and you're fighting for all of the people and the loved ones that she left behind, and everybody else who was granted their release was left behind. You keep staying strong, keep loving strong, keep supporting one another through this journey, because you're one day closer to it all being behind you. And Lord knows I am too. Lots of love from my heart to yours. I will see you beautiful ladies and gentlemen in the next one. Bye.
Alice, how do you feel? You just got out a short time ago.
Oh my goodness, I'm so happy, but it's so overwhelming for me to be able to just hug my family.
Alice, when did you first learn, and how did you learn that you were going to get out?
My case manager, Mr. Holler, called me back to the unit team. I knew I had an attorney call, but when the attorneys came on, I heard Kim Kardashian's West voice, and Kim gave me the news. And I started screaming. It was just too much.
Did you know that she was going to go to the White House and plead your case?
Yes, I knew that she was going on my birthday.